Hi, my name's Ty Audronis for Videomaker.com, and this is the review for the Z Camera E1 Action Camera. Now, you may have noticed I have put action camera in quotes, and that's because I don't really understand why this is called an action camera. It must just be based sheerly on size. I feel that any camera that has a removable lens, which by the way, it's super cool that a very small 4K cinematic camera has a removable micro four thirds lens, I think that's awesome, but not for an action camera. And here's why. An action camera, you want as few things and as few settings as possible that could get screwed up. You want to be able to turn it on and go. In fact, if you look at take one of our video, we discovered that if you turn off the camera and turn it on, you have to refocus it. The lens doesn't keep the focus from the last time the camera was on. So there's all kinds of problems that you can encounter, especially since every time you turn the camera on, you have to refocus it. Also, something that we noticed was that unless you have the aperture cinched all the way down, so basically unless you have that F number as high as possible, your depth of field is going to be extremely short. And it's going to be very difficult to keep the camera in focus. And relying on autofocus, as you can see in these shots, is, well, not the best idea. We had to reshoot a lot of shots because we relied on autofocus and tried to keep the aperture wide open so we could get as little grain and mud as possible. So when we actually use this camera as an action camera and cinch that F to where the aperture is really small so that we can really maximize our depth of field, what happens? We end up with a ton of mud and a ton of noise, whether it's a cloudy day like we have on these bicycling shots, or whether it's a clear day and we're recording an interview inside of the car as we had on these shots. You can see a ton of noise on both shots. So in that way, I don't really see this as a practical action camera. However, this interview that I'm giving right now is being recorded not only on the camera itself, but its natural sound. That's why you might be hearing a little bit of echo, is because I'm not using a lavalier microphone. I'm talking halfway across the room to the camera. But as you can hear, the sound is pretty good. So for pre-visualization, for independent filmmakers, for a destructo cam, basically shots that might destroy the camera that you wouldn't want to shoot with a Red or a Arri Alexa or even a GH4, you can shoot with this camera, and at worst you're losing $700, $699 to be specific, if the camera gets destroyed. So for an independent filmmaker, I really think this camera is essential. It's definitely got to be part of your gear bag. But for an action sports person, man, I don't see trusting this camera for action, because any camera that you have to have a DP running and you can't just hand to the person jumping out of an airplane and say, okay, press this button when you're ready to go, I don't consider that an action camera at all. So therefore, any camera with a removable lens requires way too much knowledge to run to consider it an action camera. And combine that also with the enormous amount of shutter roll that we got off of this camera. For instance, you can see this shot that was taken off the bumper of my Challenger RT as I accelerated. You can see a ton of jello going on. Or these shots where I'm going down the freeway and talking to the camera, but I didn't want to get all the road noise in there, so we won't listen to the audio. But you can see if I stop it right here, you can see that the angle of the trees is pretty severe. So there's a ton of shutter roll there. I think as far as image quality and having removable lenses and using a very small camera for cinematic purposes, this camera rules the world. But for using it as an action camera, I gotta say, just go get a GoPro Hero 4 because it has the ease of use, the reliability, the destructibility. It comes with all the stuff to put it underwater. You don't have to worry about what lenses you're putting on it. You don't have to worry about F. You don't have to worry about shutter speed. You don't have to worry about anything except just making sure the resolution is set right and hitting record when you're ready to go. However, if you're looking for a micro cinematic camera, this is probably your best buy. Do not make the mistake, though, of thinking that this can replace your GH4 or be an alternative for it. The data rate on this is 60 megabits per second. You contrast that with a GH4's 200 megabits per second. Well, the GH4 will kick this camera down the street very easily because you end up, more data means more color space, means more stuff you can do with it in post without degrading the quality. So yeah, I would still go with a GH4 over this camera if you're looking for a primary cinematic micro four thirds camera. But this camera, the Z camera E1, is very revolutionary. It's very tiny and it still takes pretty good 4K footage for its size and cost especially. So do I recommend this as an action camera? Let's just sum it all up here. Do I recommend this as an action camera? Absolutely not. But do I recommend this for every independent filmmaker's gig bag? Absolutely. For pre-visualization, for DestructoCam, for being able to stick it in tiny places that you can't stick other cameras, this camera is pretty awesome. And so for the reason that they put Action Cam on the marketing material for this, I will not give it 5 out of 5 stars on my scale. I will give it 4.9 because a tenth of a point, really. It's marketing's fault. Go blame them. All right, so this has been Ty Audronis for Videomaker.com, and this has been the review for the Z Camera E1 Action Cam. No, this is for the micro cinematic 4K camera.